Family and fellow soldiers, I'm the Professor, and this is the Moment of Truth. This morning's briefing is not about dogging anyone out. It's about reality. It's about understanding that if you're looking for a comfortable place under white supremacy, you better keep looking because no such thing exists. It's about the dangers of the end game that a lot of people played when they decided that they were going to go along with some white supremacist narrative because they thought these white supremacists had made a place for them. We cannot arrive at the truth if we hide behind lies. If your situation is bad, then say it's bad. But don't export the same attitude and behaviors that created your problems at home to someone else's doorstep, and then double down on it by saying that you're better than them. Everyone's heard the old saying, fake it until you make it. Problem is, we got a whole lot of black folks here and abroad who aren't making it, but they think it's cute to pretend like they are. When someone has to flee from home for any reason, even under the best of circumstances, that tends to mess with their heads. Why would anyone leave home? Home is supposed to be your place. It's supposed to be special. It's the place you fight for. It's the place you die for. So why would anyone abandon home when the natural impulse ought to be to fight for it? Well, in the case of Africa, the problem was tribalism. Everybody deciding that their particular tribe was more important than whatever nation they were supposed to be a part of. And this nonstop fracturing and factionalizing has been the bane of Africa's existence for millennia. But they haven't quit yet. In the case of the Caribbean, the problem is a colonized mindset. Jamaicans and the other islanders see themselves as subjects of their white colonizers, and they can't reconcile that with the fact that the home country doesn't want them, so they take the arrogance and contempt that their white colonizers had for them, and they begin to regard one another the exact same way. That's what makes it where nobody cooperates in these countries, or should I say islands. And then they double down on it by taking that same self-contempt and bringing it to the U.S. Only here they push the idea that since they come from the islands, they're counterfeit Englishmen. And somehow that makes them better than foundational black Americans, even though if that was true, we would be the ones fleeing to be in Jamaica and not the other way around. These are fictions, falsehoods, and frauds that too many people have played upon themselves. But reality always gets the last word. And speaking of words, I told you about a Nigerian word, Japa, which literally means to flee. It's basically become the most popular word in Nigeria, particularly among the young, and at this point, it's become the national pastime. But it looks like the Japa train may have derailed, principally because of what's going on in the U.S., but this wave began in Europe years ago, long before the Orange Man had his second term. However, since the U.S. sets the tone for everyone else, when they see the U.S. going hard in that same direction, a number of these countries have only been emboldened now. Nigerians in particular have a reputation for scamming. Now, while this is not true of all Nigerians, and may well not be true of even the majority, it is true for a disproportionate number who immigrated. And these are not surprisingly the exact same people who try to turn their noses up at foundational black Americans. It just goes to show the first person that they deceived was themselves. But the developments that have taken place in recent years certainly won't help on that score. Immigrants spent a lot of time telling people that the countries they fled to needed them. In fact, that's the main narrative that they use whenever they have somebody who says, oh, you just came here to see what you could get. They have to instead say, no, I came here because they wanted me to come here. Why? They were begging me to come here. Why? I did this country a favor by coming here. The line that most immigrants use to justify why they're in this or that country is to claim that they've got valuable skills. Skills that their host country needed because, well, the native population there just didn't have them. So see, you can't look down on me. I've got skills that you don't have, etc., etc. And that's what we hear all the time. You did not have enough hard-working people in your country, so you needed some hard-working people from my country to show you how to work. You are lazy. Britain had let in thousands of Nigerians who claimed to be nurses, but 2 years ago a scandal blew wide open when it was found that several hundreds of the people who came to Britain claiming to have medical skills might not have. Britain had been allowing Nigerians claiming to be nurses to come to Britain, but they didn't trust the Nigerian testing system, so instead they had the applicants complete a computer-based test in their native Nigeria. But then the Brits became suspicious because a lot of those people completed their computer-based tests unusually fast. Hundreds, if not thousands of applicants are now under suspicion of having obtained their test results fraudulently. This case is still ongoing, but there's been a number of people who've already had their visas revoked, as well as others who have been trying to appeal their particular cases. It's just been a mess. But it doesn't stop at employment. A lot of immigrants have found that when they do get to the UK, the cost of living is higher than they thought it would be, and that while getting a job in Britain does pay better than, well, anything in Nigeria, it's also a fact that the cost of living in Britain makes it where, even with a steady job, it's simply not enough to get by, and in places like London, getting a good job isn't enough. Immigrants like the ones from Nigeria wind up having to get roommates and other arrangements just to try to make sure they have a roof over their heads. And it's been the cost of living issue that's led a number of Nigerian immigrants to go back home. After all, they can be broke in Nigeria just fine. They don't need to cross the ocean to get to Britain just to be broke there. A lot of Nigerians had the plan that they would live modestly while they were in Britain, and they'd be able to send plenty of money back home, so eventually they, in retirement, or their loved ones today, would be able to live royally. But instead, they found the cost of living was so high that they couldn't even afford to support themselves. There's nothing left to send back home, and they don't even have the ability to save enough to start a business in the UK. So even without arresting people or threatening visas, the UK has plenty of ways to force people to keep their money in Britain so that it never leaves the country, and they certainly have ways to keep it out of the immigrants' own pockets. That was something that a lot of them didn't count on. And of course, certain regulations and rules regarding dependents being brought over have also been changed. So the myth of the overachieving immigrant is a white media fantasy. It's pushed by right-wing think tanks who simply want to have a talking point to justify corporations hiring slave labor from abroad. But it's also pushed by the white left who see immigration as a potential demographic counterlever that could bring about the changes they want. Both of them are wrong. But this is the backdrop that's been going on for many years now. And it's amazing that a lot of the people who came to the United States only because they had foundational Black Americans kick open the doors for them also decided that they were going to wag their finger in Black people's faces and make all sorts of insults generation after generation. This is not something that came about since the 60s. This has been a pattern that's been in effect since at least the 1920s. And then you got people who actually have the nerve to say that foundational Black Americans don't have a culture. When the reality is, other than whatever their favorite food is, these people from these other places can't tell you anything about their culture. Culture, broadly defined, being a particular group's traditions, practices, customs, and beliefs. And the perverse irony is, white society in particular rarely tries to push the talking point that foundational Black Americans have no culture, at least not anymore. They know we do because so much of America's identity, the virtuous and honorable parts that is, are entirely owing to us. And because over the centuries, everything from America's style of dress to even the words and phrases that are so unique to and synonymous with this country came from us, or at the very least are linked directly to our presence and our experiences here. Our oppressors understand that we have a culture and they know exactly what it is, so instead of denying it, they've spent centuries attacking it as being inferior to theirs. But make no mistake, white society doesn't attack us because they truly believe our culture is completely inferior to them. Quite the opposite. Our culture is irresistible, and they can't help but to copy it, try to bogart it, and their corporations co-opt it, and their so-called entertainers just straight up steal it. They see our culture as being social and cultural miscegenation, and the same way those black genes are dominant genes and can annihilate the white phenotype, our culture is a culture of justice that can annihilate white supremacy too. Every time we make gains, every time we make change in this country, it moves this savage nation that much further away from white supremacy and just a little bit further towards something resembling decency and justice. So they still say that anything we create, anything we do is inferior because, well, reasons. This is the 21st century and they're still repeating that talking point. The reason they repeat that narrative nonstop is because there's a part of their culture that needs it. Their culture is based on pushing a narrative of superiority. Their culture is based on a lie. But they'll never let it go because their culture can't exist without it. It's the only thing that actually unified them. A lot of us suffer from chronic insecurity and feelings of unworthiness. We've been demonized and attacked nonstop for centuries, as no other group in human history has, and we're still under endless attack today from every major arena of the society. We know what they say are lies, but we, too many of us, are desperately trying to find a way away from blackness because we think that's going to save us. Well, look at the immigrants if you want an example of how that'll turn out. Most black folks have become codependents, and we're hoping that other people will say that we're all right in their eyes so that we can feel better about ourselves. I guess nobody ever told some black folks where self-esteem comes from, and it's not from other people. A lot of black folks, especially those who consider themselves to be so sociable and worldly, they've engaged in a foolish and relentless obsession with having friends. And as a result, a lot of black folks have spent decades pursuing the delusion of allies, because that's all they cared about. We need allies. We have to have allies. Grow up. We are a group. Groups don't have friends. Groups have interests. When you start thinking about what you want, then you start looking at the people around you in terms of whether or not they can enable you to get it. This is how everybody else sees things, and why so many of us keep falling for that old con game about friends and allies, and why we don't see anybody else chasing after that mirage. You cannot run away from who and what you are any more than the immigrants could, because no matter where you go, you always take yourself with you, and that includes one's insecurities too. Sure, you can go ahead and cover it up by trying to say that this group of people over here who are the designated whipping boys are inferior to you, but sooner or later reality gets the last word, the same way that it does with all of those people who thought that they had friends and allies, only when the crap hit the fan they realized they were out there all alone yet again. The problem isn't that black folks, whether they be in the US or Britain or elsewhere, whether they be foundational black American or any other type of black person, don't know what's going on. We've been seeing this stuff playing itself out for decades, if not centuries. The problem is that there are just too many people who are suicidally addicted to the idea that they're going to ignore reality and still think that they're going to survive reality. The Nigerians and others fled from Nigeria only for a lot of them to find themselves fleeing right back. And a similar pattern plays itself out in the United States. A lot of black folks here thought to themselves that they were going to be finding a way onto team white society, only to instead find themselves inevitably on the outs. Whether one is trying to flee an entire country or whether they're trying to flee being perceived as black in this one, the end is always the same. So many black people think that it's cute to mythologize white power into something that it's not. They've taken white control and they've placed it on a pedestal. And then when white power inevitably breaks bad on them, because it always has and always will, what do? They resort to trying to run right back to the very same black folks that they ran away from. Instead of looking for ways to try to escape from the situation that they were in, they inevitably find themselves now being forced to actually have to confront it. That doesn't mean that they're going to actually try to change it, but it does mean that they're going to need to realize there is no running from this fight. So whatever the problems at home are, they're going to have to be looked at and they're going to have to be fixed by the people who live there sooner or later. Instead of practicing all of that tribalism and factionalism and trying to find new and inventive ways to be disrespectful towards one another and complaining about the corrupt government as opposed to fighting it when you're supposed to be the majority in these places, now they're being stonewalled from abroad and they're being challenged at home to actually do better, to come together with other black folks and to actually have to build, which is exactly what they should have done in the first place. Good day, and be one. I'd like to take a moment to mention some of our contributors: Sakina Collins, Suleiman Alaji, Reasonable Dude, Bobby Johnson, and Shannon Moore. Salute to them and thank you to everyone for listening, liking, and sharing this message. Black empowerment only exists because of you.